Hello, and welcome to Weekly Update. My name is Bill Galvano. Next week in Tallahassee, the Florida legislature is going to gather for the legislative session. This is 60 days in which the House and the Senate will work hard in their chambers to, number one, produce a budget, which is really the only constitutional requirement that they have. But in addition to that, tackle many issues that are important to the state of Florida and important to our community. Today, we are very lucky to have with us Representative Jim Boyd from District 68. Jim, welcome.
Thank you, Bill.
Jim, why don't you take a minute and tell the viewers a little bit about yourself. This is your first session and you were recently elected in November, and many of us know you, but for those who don't, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I'm a fourth generation Floridian, lived in Manatee County all my life, married to Sandy of 27 years. I have a 23-year-old son and a 25-year-old daughter who are both just recently graduated from Florida State University and are in the job market now. So I'm experiencing life as a legislator and as a dad of new job entrants. And as you well know, our big push this year in Florida legislature is jobs in the economy. I'm a small business owner, owned and operated with a partner, Boyd Insurance, for the past 32 years, and also a commercial real estate broker and have a small commercial real estate and investment real estate firm. So that's what I do in my day job, but I'm very excited to serve this district and our community and the Florida legislature, and excited about next Tuesday when it all begins. Well,
that's great, and we really appreciate the experience that you bring, and that's why we have a citizen legislature. People who have real lives, real jobs, and families and concerns are the ones who represent us in Tallahassee, and you're no different. We had a big change this year in the Florida House. A lot of new members. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know it's a big freshman class.
We do have a big freshman class, and I think it's one of the largest ever, and it's very exciting. I've gotten to know pretty much all of them. I feel very comfortable with all of them. We've formed some strong bonds already, and looking forward to working well together. They come from a variety of backgrounds. Some of them were in governmental service, a lot of them in the private sector, some attorneys, a federal prosecutor from Miami who's a fine young man, and it's a very exciting time to be in the Florida legislature. My compatriot on the east side of our community, Greg Stubbe, is no different than the rest. He's very energetic and very excited, and I think very well prepared to help lead us as we come in as freshman legislators.
Now, Greg Stubbe represents the district formerly represented by Ron Reagan, who came in the legislature when I did back in 2002. We also have a change to the south. Is that correct?
That's correct. Ray Pilon took Keith Fitzgerald's spot in district just below us, northern part of Sarasota County, a little dip into Manatee County. And he has a lot of experience from the governmental side. He was on some water boards, and he worked, I think, as a sheriff's deputy for some period of time as well. So he brings kind of a unique perspective. And I'll say this, the freshmen have big shoes to fill, Bill. You going out as rules chairman, such an important and powerful position in the Florida House, and our friend Ron Reagan as Speaker Pro Tem. Greg and I both know that we've got very big shoes to fill, and let me just take a second and thank you for the leadership you provided for us. We have had doors open for us in Tallahassee. I think Greg and I both have enjoyed opportunities that maybe some of the others haven't because of the introductions that you made for us. And I think that speaks well of certainly our working relationship, but also speaks well of for our community, because it gives us a chance to kind of hit the ground running, whereas maybe some others perhaps have to prove themselves a little more. Thankfully, you guys have taken a little bit of risk in us and decided to promote us a little bit ahead of us getting there. So we appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. They mean a lot. And I will say that you have hit the ground running. You and Representative Stubbe, in fact, the whole delegation, and I'm expecting great things from each of you. You've been in committee hearings. When did you start committee hearings?
Well, as you know, we were sworn in November, and pretty much started right after that. We were up in December for some organizational meetings or some orientation type meetings, and committees pretty much started in right after the first year in January. We were there 2 weeks in January, And as you recall from
Oh,
your
yes.
plenty of time there, Tuesday through Thursday and sometimes on Fridays. So that was 2 weeks in January. February, we were there for 3 weeks. This is our week home, so we're all here trying to wrap up loose ends with our businesses and our families and the things that we need to do to get prepared for next week. And then the first of next week, we hit the ground running with session opening next Tuesday.
Well, and a lot of people don't realize that you spend so much time in Tallahassee beyond just the regular session. And I want to talk to you about your committee assignments, but before we do that, you had a unique experience, as did many freshmen this year. As soon as you were elected, I think it was very shortly thereafter, you actually went into a special session.
We did. And you and our other fine legislators, the session before this special session, passed a number of bills that went through the House and went through the Senate. And then for reasons of his own, our governor vetoed some of those. So we went into special session and overturned a number of those vetoes. So we were sworn in Tuesday morning, and Tuesday afternoon, the gavel dropped and we were in session, which certainly was a unique experience for us, but a pretty exciting experience. And I'm very grateful that we were able to get some good things back on the books that should have been done last year, but unfortunately were postponed a little bit. So that was an exciting time, but I think a very good time and a very useful time, and I think needed to be done. So.
Well, and now we have a supermajority in the House. We also have a supermajority in the Senate, which means that the majority party has enough votes to do things without a lot of give and take on some of the issues. So I know that that's a new experience for you, obviously, but is a change from when I served in the last 2 years, and I think that played out in the special session as well. Let's talk about your committee assignments. Tell me what committees you're on, and we'll go from there.
Okay. The Speaker has organized the House this year into 9 major committees. One of those major committees is Economic Affairs, and I'm on that committee. And I'm very excited to be on that committee because that's going to handle lots of economic issues that will be good for our state and our community, jobs and incenting businesses to be here and the like. So that's a very important and I think a very useful committee, and I'm thrilled to be part of that. I'm also,
that's something you ran on as well.
That is something I ran on, and I think that's an area where I think I have a little expertise because of my business background. So I was grateful to be selected for that committee, and we have a very good committee. We've had plenty of meetings already, as we talked about a minute ago, and there's been a lot of good dialogue and a lot of good thoughts and ideas already coming through that committee. Then I'm on Ag Appropriations, so Agriculture Appropriations, so that's the money side of agriculture. Thrilled to be on that committee as well because, as you well know, one of the 2 economic drivers, not only in our state, but in our community and our district especially, is agriculture. So I'm happy to be part of that and maybe some good and positive things that can happen there. I'm also on Ag Policy, which is the lawmaking and the policy side of agriculture. So that as well I'm excited to be on. Banking and Insurance Committee, subcommittee, I'm on that. And with my background in in the insurance business and also as a member and founding shareholder of a small community bank, I think I've got something that I can offer there. And then finally on the Health and Human Services Quality Subcommittee. So that's hospitals, healthcare clinics, nursing homes, and the like, and that's the policy side of that. So that's kind of new to me. Although I'm on Manatee Memorial's Board of Governors, that's an area that I'm learning about, but it's a very exciting and a very important part of our state economy and our state, the services that we provide as not only a state, but as providers in the community. So that's a very important committee, I think, as well.
All of those committees are very important committees. So you have a lot of work ahead of you and behind you at this point. But you have a lot of work as you will head into the session. You mentioned insurance. I understand that you have your own individual insurance bill.
Yes, I do. There's 2 bills that I'm working on from the insurance side. The first one I'll mention is PIP fraud bill. And PIP fraud has, and that's personal injury protection, I'm sorry, and which is a part of your personal auto policy. It's the medical payments, $10,000 of medical payments that pay you without regard to fault or liability on anybody else's part if you're involved in an automobile accident. So you or your passengers.
A lot of people know it as PIP.
A lot of know PIP, that's correct. There's a cottage industry that's developed in Florida that's $1 billion fraud industry in the PIP arena. And we're trying to implement some changes there that will scale back and hopefully deter some of that fraud. So that's one bill that we're working on. There's various components that get into a little more detail than you probably want right now.
Well,
but
in general, I'd like to know a little bit about the components.
Okay, some of it is licensing of clinics. You know, there's a network of clinics out there that provide services that need to be, should be, and ought to be licensed and monitored by the appropriate authorities. There's a way for some of those clinics just to change owners periodically without regard to regulatory approval and the like. So they're able to, in the fraud instance, they're able to run people through there without a lot of oversight. So we're working on trying to tighten that up a little bit. There's also providers out there, and this is a minority. I want to stress, this is a minority of healthcare and the like providers, but are causing a huge problem. And in some cases, they're billing, let's say, 10 bills on a particular incident, and maybe 4 or 5 of them are fraudulent. And they're saying, well, if the other 4 or 5 are legitimate, you ought to pay those, just don't pay the fraudulent claims. Our bill says, no, if you're a provider that's billing fraudulent claims, we're not going to pay for any of them. You know, you need to be responsible and able to show us that, you know, you're a competent and a worthwhile provider that's doing the right thing. So those are issues that are contained in our bill.
Well, I think that's great that you're doing that. I know that issue has been around for a long time, and we've tried to address it while I was there, and it sounds like you may have some real measures to make a difference. As I recall, a lot of the fraud was not in our area, but yet the people that you represent end up paying for it through higher rates.
Very good point. And there is as people will start to see on their insurance renewal policies, there's a fraud assessment, if you will, that's going to be attached per vehicle on your policy that's covering these costs. So it is a real impact whether you're in the community that is affected by it or not. But I will tell you, it used to be predominantly on the southeast coast of Florida. Tampa now in Hillsborough County is one of the main areas for abuse. So it's moving up this way, and we need to get our arms around it.
Do you have a number?
A number?
House bill number?
It's just coming out of drafting, so we haven't quite got it out of drafting yet.
Okay.
It's close, and as you well know from your experience, we're close to the time frame that needs to come out and get filed, so it's very close.
Well, when you get a number, let me know, and we'll be sure to share that number with the viewers so they can track that bill.
Thank you.
That's one insurance bill. You had another one.
There's another one, and we talked about this a lot during our campaign, and that's the Citizens Insurance Company. As you recall from your time in the legislature, there was a time and a point where that was necessary to implement a company to cover individuals' homes and property that the private market wasn't able to do as a result of a lot of storms and claims and the like, and that was Citizens Insurance. Unfortunately, over the years, it's grown at dramatic proportions. It's up to 1.3 million policies, and it right now is the market of choice rather than the market of last resort in Florida. What a lot of people don't realize is if and when, and I like to say when because we live in Florida, we're surrounded by water, we're going to have hurricanes. But when that next hurricane occurs, if we have a season like 04 and 05, that's going to put unbelievable strain on Citizens Insurance because the actuarially sound rates that you would expect out of an insurance company aren't necessarily so with Citizens because their rates were suppressed for good reasons when it started, but it's just grown at a level that it can't sustain itself. So should that storm occur, individual policyholders, not just in Citizens, but any policyholder in the state of Florida, with the exception of a few specific policies, will have the potential of being assessed for the losses in the Citizens corporation. So we've got to get our arms around that. As I said, it's 1.3 million policies and growing, and my bill starts to tail back the participation in Citizens. It also encourages private companies and private capital to come back to this market by allowing them to compete on a more even playing field. And what's happened over the past several years, Citizens, is their rates haven't been what we would consider actuarially sound, and their financial standards that they're required, that normal companies are required to, or private companies are required to abide by in the state of Florida, aren't the same requirements for Citizens. So a Hartford or a State Farm or a Travelers or a company like that is not allowed to participate given the same standards that Citizens is. So it's an uneven playing field. Our thought is if we get Citizens back to actuarially sound rates that the market suggests should be there, and all of the independent experts suggest should be there, private capital will start to say, well, look, now we'll come back and compete in this market because we think it's a fair market. And we'll start to depopulate Citizens, attract private capital back to the market, so the companies that we knew 10, 15 years ago that were providing a lot of coverage for a lot of our friends and neighbors in our communities will be back and able to participate and able to compete in this market. So that's in a big picture what that bill entails. There's a lot of moving parts, if you will, to it. But we hope to have some significant progress there. And that's been something that I think many have talked about through this past year. And I trust that on both sides of the aisle, there's already indications that we support getting Citizens back to the market of last resort versus the market of choice in Florida. So that's encouraging.
So with that bill, clarify for the viewers how that ultimately helps the consumer, because it's a complicated issue, and sometimes the people watching the process think it's insurance protectionism or making a better market for the companies.
Right.
But as I understand it, ultimately this is a positive measure for the pocketbooks of the people you represent. If you can just touch on that.
Sure, and I think it is, Bill. I'm in the insurance business, and my livelihood is derived from people being able to buy and afford insurance coverage, and we represent a number of companies. So my ultimate goal for my customers is not only providing them a competitive, comprehensive product or policy, but also providing them one with a solvent carrier. And in the past 10 years, many small carriers have come to this market. A number of them haven't succeeded and have failed because they were undercapitalized and not able to compete in this market. So Citizens has grown and grown. My thought is it's a simple law of economics that if you allow the market to compete and everybody is on the same playing field, then they're able to, an insurance company is able to say, well, I'm competing against the same standards, the same rules, the same programs as your public company. We can do that. But if a private company is, like let's say a State Farm, for instance, which is a big carrier in Florida, 600,000 or so policies. Citizens, remember, has 1.3 million. If they see that they can compete on a level playing field, they're likely to come back and say, look, we'll invest in Florida, we'll bring more capital here, we'll write more policies. And if they write more policies, then Travelers will say, we'll write more policies too. So once that starts happening, then I think competition comes back to the market, and that's what drives prices. So certainly my goal, nor do I think my fellow legislators are as well. I think my fellow legislators' goals are to bring opportunity and competition back to the market, whether it's insurance or anything else, because that's what gets us a better price at the end of the day. So I think our friends and neighbors will see that more opportunity, better pricing, and more choices will lead to a lower premium as we go forward.
Very good. Well, you have 2 bills that you just talked about. You're allowed to file 6. Are you filing 6 bills?
I'm actually filing 5. We had some, as you will recall, because you were rules chairman and you controlled this process up until this year. We had a certain time period that you were allowed to file bills in to get them on, and I missed one spot because I didn't have enough, quote unquote, enough bills in time. And it's kind of interesting, and you'll remember back when you were a freshman, 2 months ago, I was wondering, well, what bills am I going to file? You know, I'm listening to the community. I'm trying to decide what's important. And my goal wasn't to just rush out there and try to find some bills to file. You know, frankly, I feel like there's some bills that probably we ought to move off the table. And I'll mention that in a second, as you probably know, a process that's underway right now. But so I just tried to be very judicious about what I went after in terms of filing. And as well, as you recall, I wanted to find bills that were good public policy, that made sense for the community, and that had a chance of succeeding. So I was pretty judicious in that process.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And one thing that I always liked about the House versus the Senate is that we only had 6 bill slots. And over in the Senate, they could file as many bills as they want. You'd have some senators filing 50, 60 bills. Tell me about your other 3 bills.
Okay, the other 3 that we filed, one is a court records bill that actually was brought to us by Chip Shore, our clerk of courts, and it's an electronic filing bill. And it's fairly non-controversial, and all it does is by 2012, the state's attorneys and the public defenders have to have a plan in place to electronically file their documents, so they're accessible by everybody. They're not, paper files. And over the long run, this makes certainly the system a lot more efficient and a lot more cost-effective. So that's one that I think will be pretty, hopefully, pretty easy to get through. Another one is a truss bill for the firefighters brought it to us. And lightweight trusses that are in buildings, there's a requirement that just a notification is put on the front of the
for their safety.
For their safety. So when they're going into a burning building, that it alerts the firemen as they're on their way in what to expect and what they're facing. So, it protects them and gives them a great deal of public safety, or personal safety, excuse me.
Well, when we started today, I mentioned the one requirement the Constitution has for the legislative session, and that is to pass a budget. Tell me about the budget. This is the big challenge.
This is a big challenge, and that is the one requirement. By any measure, we face $3.5 to $4 billion or so dollars in shortfall. In the various appropriations committees, we've been asked to look at our budgets for each committee and trim 15% off of each of those budgets. So I'm on, as I mentioned earlier, ag appropriations. So I went through the agriculture budget and tried to decide what made sense to cut, what made sense to continue to fund, what made sense maybe to increase in some areas, as long as we came up with the end result of that. So there is the other thing that I think is encouraging about this whole process, and with my freshman colleagues, is there's a real spirit of let's look at everything and let's make sure that what we're doing is what government ought to be doing, and let's quit the overreaching arm of government that interferes, if you will, into everybody's lives or businesses, and just let's think about what's essential as a government to fund and to support. So there's this spirit of everything's on the table, and I think that's good. I mean, certainly we don't want to just abandon everything, because there's been a lot of good done before we got there. But there's a huge opportunity, I think, for us now to look at everything and decide what really is important for state government to provide and what's not. And this budget process, I think, is kind of illuminating those areas of opportunity. And, it's a daunting challenge, but I feel very confident that we're going to be able to meet it or exceed it. And I think that's exciting. It's some people, I had some folks in my office today that said, boy, you're facing tough issues this year. How do you feel about that? And I said, my predecessor, Bill Galvano, faced tough issues 8 years ago when he came into office, and they probably seemed just as daunting or just as overwhelming as this might today. 10 years from now, whoever takes our place in this process, if I'm fortunate enough to be there that long, they'll face similar issues that are tough and daunting. But we all have to work together, roll up our sleeves, and do what's right, and remember at the end of the day who we serve. And I think we'll get there. I don't have any doubt at all that we won't get there.
Well, it's encouraging to hear your optimism, at least in the ability of everyone to tackle the issues. One thing that is great about the state of Florida is that we are required to have a balanced budget, which means when you come home at the end of session, it's going to be a fiscally sound state. You're not going to run up a deficit, but you're going to have to make some hard decisions in order to do that. And I think you have really good leadership in the House. Tell me a little bit about Speaker Cannon.
You're absolutely right. We have great leadership. Speaker Cannon is an inclusive, engaged man. He's interested in everybody's perspective. You know, I kind of looked at going in as a freshman legislator as, okay, you know, keep your head down and your mouth shut and just kind of learn the process. And I do need to learn that, but he is very engaging. He's asked for our input. He's solicited our input on a variety of issues. So, and he's made committee assignments that I think are very appropriate and very important. And while he tried to accommodate our requests, I think he's made some good decisions otherwise that in areas where maybe I wouldn't have thought about serving on Health and Human Services. But I'm enjoying that, and that's a huge area of importance for our state. So from that standpoint, I think he's done a great job, and he's really a fine man to serve under. Very conservative, very you know, he looks at the future with a view that I think is important for Florida, and I'm excited as I can be about working with him. And the gentleman that will follow him, Will Weatherford, is just as good. And you know Will, you know them both very well. I think Will's going to not miss a beat when he comes in, and so there's a looks like very strong consistency of good leadership for the next, well, actually for the next 8 years. You know, as you probably know, we've already picked our speaker for you know, our last 2 years in office if we're all there that long. So, and that's good because that gives some consistency in leadership, and people can start to share ideas that are important and engage in areas where it makes a difference. So, I'm excited about working with all of them.
Well, and some of that is a product of term limits as well, and there are pros and cons. Certainly, having you serve in the House is a pro. We are running a little short on time, so I want to give you an opportunity to share with the viewers anything that you think is important for them to know, and I'm certainly going to have you back. Especially, I would love to have you back after session. You can tell us how it was.
I'll be happy to do that, and I would just say, it is a privilege and an honor to serve this community. Every time I walk in the Capitol doors, I get chills, and I hope I never lose that. And I'm very, very excited about serving our community. What I would ask our friends and neighbors, when you have thoughts, when you have ideas, please communicate with us. You know, Bill, from having served so well for 8 years, you don't have all the answers. You know, you've got a good mind and a good perspective, but you need input and you need feedback. So I would just solicit from our viewers ideas, thoughts, whatever it is. As unimportant as it may seem to you, or as important as it may seem to you, let us know, because we need to know what our constituents, what our friends think is important, and also they may have some very good solutions to some tough issues we're facing that we haven't thought about. So I would encourage that, and probably if I could leave the viewers with one thought, it would be that. Communicate with us. Let us know when we're not doing what they want. Let us know when there's things that we can do that they want, because that's very important.
Representative Boyd, thank you so much for joining us here on Weekly Update.
Thank you, Bill.
And thank you all for joining us. Look forward to visiting with you again very soon.